Hello, grade 11. Welcome to week 7 in Earth and Life Science. I'm Mrs. Princess G. Mosca Caleja, your teacher for today. So what are you waiting for? Go and get your module and be ready with your paper and pen. And let's proceed to the discussion. But before that, let us know first the different learning competencies. At the end of the lesson, you learners will be able to explain how populations of organisms have changed and continue to change over time, showing patterns of descent with modification from common ancestors to produce the organismal diversity observed today. 2. Describe how the present system of classification of organisms is based on evolutionary relationships. So our lesson 1 will be this one. Population of organisms have changed over time. Let's proceed to this drawing. Image. This image or drawing shows how a population of mice and bees change over time. So we have here figure 1, 2, and 3. I have here some questions that you might answer based from your own observation. And let's see if your answer is correct, okay? So, again, we have 1, 2, and 3. First question. Describe how the population of mice is different in figure 3 to figure 1. What is their differences? Explain what happened to cause this difference. Okay? Observe 1 and 3. 2. Is the population of mice different in figure C than in figure B? Explain your answer. Figure C, figure B. Okay? Next question. For the mice in the figures, what characteristics was an adaptation that increased fitness? Okay, take a look on the different mice present in the 3 figures. Last question. What does the term fitness mean when biologists are discussing evolution? Okay, so these are the different questions. I know you have your own thought, your own idea about this question. So let us answer number 1. Describe how the population of mice is different in figure 3 to figure 1. Explain what happened to cause these differences. Okay, take a look in figure 1. So, how many mice do we have in figure 1? Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Same true with figure 2. We have 2, 4, 6, 7. Then 3, we have 2, 4, 5 mice. So, meaning, in figure 1, it shows overproduction of mice, which also express variation. The variation shows in their color, hair color. So as you can see, we have the white and gray. In figure 2, this portion, figure 2 shows an environmental selection pressure in terms of the bird acting as a predator to the different mice. And in figure 3, shows most of white mice who have the least favorable trait of being white, being removed from the population. This reduces the population, leaving less competition for the darker mice. This would lead to the darker mice expressing greater fitness than the white mice, which would result in a genetic shift towards the darker mice. So that is our answer for question number 1. 2. Is the population of mice different in figure C than in figure B? Explain your answer. Definitely, yes. In the population differ from each figure. The population of mice in figure 3 is less compared to the population in figure 1 and 2. Why? That is because the bird is eating all the white mice because they are easier to be seen. Okay? 4. We have question. Next question. For the mice in the figures, what characteristics was an adaptation that increased fitness? Okay, so as you can see, there is a white and gray mice. So, the characteristic that was adaptation that increased fitness is the camouflage. Why? Camouflage is what allowed the gray mice to blend in with their environment and increase their fitness, in the sense that because of their color, the bird cannot easily find or see them. That's why the bird only eat the white mice, which is easily to be seen. Okay? Next, what does the term fitness mean when biologists are discussing evolution? We have different terms of explanation or definition when we talk about fitness. But when biologists talk about fitness in discussing evolution, this means that fitness is the ability to live longer and reproduce more often of favorable traits. So, that is our answers to this question. Drawings on how population of mice on the beach change over time. Let's now proceed to this part, the natural selection. There are two co-discoverers of natural selection. We have Alfred Wallace and Charles Darwin. But Darwin is the principal theorist of the notion, whose most famous work on the topic is On the Origin of Species in 1859. It is the process by which organisms change over time as a result of changes in heritable physical or behavioral trait. This also allows an organism to better adapt to its environment, help it survive, and have more offspring. The genetically inherited trait that increases the survival of that species would persist through the process of evolution by natural selection. Adaptation is when the genetic trait evolves. This process that increases the probability that the species will survive in a particular environment. The process in nature by which organisms better adapt to their environment tend to survive and reproduce more than those less adapted to their environment is called, or is what we call, natural selection. What is natural selection? Natural selection is one of several key concepts contained within the theory of evolution. To understand clearly what natural selection is, why it's so important, let us first take a quick look at two other evolutionary concepts, descent with modification and the overarching idea of common descent. Descent with modification is an observable fact that when parents have children, those children often look and behave slightly different than their parents and slightly different from each other. They descend from their parents with modification. The differences found in offspring are partially due to random genetic mutations. Common descent is the idea that all living things on Earth is related. They descended from a common ancestor. Through the gradual process of descent with modification, over many generations, a single original species, though to have given rise to all the life we see today. The common descent of all life on Earth is not directly observable fact. We have no way of going back in time to watch it happen. Instead, common descent as a conclusion based on the massive collection of observable facts found independently in the study of fossils, genetics, comparative anatomy, mathematics, biochemistry, and species distribution. Because the evidence of common descent is so overwhelming, the concept has been around since ancient times. In the past, however, it was rejected by many philosophers and scientists for one reason. You cannot get order and complexity from random chaos alone. The bodies and behaviors of living things are extremely complex and orderly. Descent with modification simply produces random variation. All through history, no one could explain how complex life from simple life through random variation. Until Charles Darwin discovered natural selection. Charles Darwin, who lived from 1809 to 1882, he was a naturalist, someone who studies nature. At the start of his career, he traveled the world by ship collecting and documenting plants and animals. During his travels, Darwin became very interested in the idea of common descent. He noticed that islands contain species of plants and animals unique to those islands. They can't be found any place else on Earth, but they often look and behave surprisingly similar to the creatures found on nearby continents. Turtles on Galapagos Islands can be distinguished from those of Africa. Meanwhile, with the exception of size, they are almost identical to species found nearby South America. Darwin believed the similarities could be best explained through common descent. Long ago, a tortoise from the mainland may have drifted to the island, possibly on a raft of storm debris, and once arriving, laid her eggs. Random changes caused by descent with modification over thousands of years eventually transformed the island creatures and the mainland creatures so much that they could no longer be considered the same species. This idea made good sense to Darwin except for one thing. The island creatures he found were not just randomly different from their mainland cousins, they were especially adapted for island life. The Galapagos is a collection of 18 main islands, many of which are home to tortoise. The larger islands have lots of grass and vegetation. Tortoise there grow extra heavy and have dome-like shells. Some of the smaller islands have very little grass, forcing the tortoise to feed an island cactus. The best cactus pods grow on the tops of the plants. Fortunately, tortoises on these islands are equipped with expanded front legs and saddle-like shells, allowing them to stretch their necks extra long to reach their food. It's almost as if these island creatures have been perfectly sculpted to survive within their unique environments. How did this sculpting take place? Random descent with modification alone could never do such a thing. Darwin drew upon his knowledge of selective breeding to answer this question. For thousands of years, farmers have been taking wild plants and animals and through the process of selective breeding have sculpted the original wild forms into new domestic form, much better suited for human use and consumption. The process is slow but simple. If a single plant produces 100 seeds, most will grow to nearby identical to parent plant. A few, however, will be slightly different. Some durations may be an undesirable smaller size, bitter taste, vulnerability to disease, and so on. Other variations may be highly valued, thicker, sweeter leaves, for example. If a farmer only allows the best plant to reproduce and create seeds for the next crop, small positive changes will add up over multiple generations, eventually producing a dramatically superior vegetable. You might be surprised to hear that broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage, breeds of a single type of breed commonly found along the shores of the English Channel. The evolution of this original plant into all the varieties we see today was carefully guided by different farmers around the world who simply selected for different traits. It is important to note that the farmer doesn't actually create anything. Random descent with modification creates new traits. The farmer simply chooses which of those new creations are allowed to reproduce and which are not. Darwin proposed that nature itself is also capable of selection. It may not have an intelligent brain like a farmer, but nature is an extremely dangerous place in which to live in. There are germs which can kill you, animals that can eat you, or you could die of heat exhaustion. You could die of exposure to the cold. When parents produce a variety of offspring, nature, simply by being difficult to survive in, decides which of those variations get to live and reproduce and which do not. Over multiple generations, creatures became more and more fit for survival and reproduction within their specific environment. Darwin could call this process natural selection. Since Darwin first put forth his idea in mid-1800, natural selection has been studied and witnessed numerous times in nature and in science laboratories. What started out as a mere idea is now officially an observable fact. Darwin's discovery has greatly expanded our understanding of the natural world. It has led to amazing new breakthroughs, and it finally allowed scientists to seriously consider the idea of common descent. So to sum things up, what exactly is natural selection? Natural selection is the process by which random evolutionary changes are selected for by nature in a consistent, orderly, non-random way. Through the process of descent with modification, new traits are randomly produced. Nature then carefully decides which of those new traits to keep. Positive changes add up over multiple generations. Negative traits are quickly discarded. Through this simple ongoing process, nature, even though it may not have a thinking mind, is capable of producing incredibly complex and beautiful creations. Okay, so that is our lesson 1 for week 7 in Earth and Life Science. I hope you learn well. Watch the other video for our lesson 2 this week. Goodbye, grade 11. God bless you.